Decisions must be made at various levels in the workplace. They are also made at the various stages in the management process. If certain resources must be used, someone must make a decision authorizing certain persons to appropriate such resources. So base sa opinion ko, sa decision, merong mga levels na tinatawag o mga term. Halimbawa na lang yung long term decision na kung saan yung mga highest officer o yung mga higher officer yung mga nag-handle. Tapos yung short term decision na parang pang araw-araw lang na decision para dun sa isang workplace o sa isang team. Tapos ang decision kasi nakapaloob dito yung planning, yung organizing, tapos yung leading, dahil nga manager ka, syempre leader ka ng isang halimbawang workplace o team. Tapos controlling. Decision making is the responsibility of engineer manager. It is understandable for managers to make wrong decisions at times. The wise manager will correct them as soon as they are identified. The bigger issue is the manager who cannot or do not want to make decisions. Delaney concludes that this type of managers are dangerous and should be removed from their position as soon as possible. Sinasabi dito na decision making is responsibility of engineer manager. So hindi lang naman siguro engineer manager, kundi lahat siguro ng manager dapat marunong magdesisyon ng tama dun sa workplace nila. Yung mga manager kasi na mga nagde-decide pero hindi maganda yung kinalalabasan. Kaya meron tayong tinatawag na decision making skill na kung saan yun dapat yung taglay ng isang manager para ma-manage niya yung isang company or isang team, na kung ano ba dapat yung gawin sa isang problema na to, na ano ba dapat yung tamang solusyon sa isang problema sa isang workplace, parang ganun. Nasabi nga dito na kapag yung isang manager ay hindi niya ginagampanan yung tungkulin niya, magiging malaking problema to sa isang workplace. Kaya dapat tanggalin sa posisyon na yun.
Management must strive to choose a decision option as correctly as possible. Since they have that power, they are responsible for whatever outcome their decisions bring. The higher the management level is, the bigger and the more complicated decision-making becomes. Dahil nga kaakibat ng management ang decision-making, so dapat, as much as possible, sikapin natin na maging tama ang mapipili natin na decision. Kumbaga, dapat mag-strive tayo sa wise choice or wise decision. So, of course, in a management, syempre ang may power dyan na mag-handle is yung manager. So, kung i-relate na lang natin ang salitang management sa ating mga sarili. So, di ba, syempre, may power tayo sa ating mga sarili. May power tayo na mag-decide sa isang bagay. But always remember na may kaakibat itong responsibility. So, we must be ready or we must handle kung ano man ang magiging outcome ng nagawa nating desisyon. So, sinasabi rin na sa management, mentras mas mataas ang management level, mas mahirap or mas komplikado ang pagde-decide. Para din sa sarili kong opinion, ito yung situation na sobra na yung pressure or mataas yung pressure. An example may be provided as follows. The production manager of a certain company has received a written request from a section head regarding the purchase of an air conditioning unit. Almost simultaneously, another request from another section was forwarded to him requiring the purchase of a forklift. The production manager was informed by his superior that he can only buy one of the two requested items due to budgetary constraints. The production manager must now make a decision. His choice, however, must be based on sound arguments, for he will be held responsible later on if he had made the wrong choice. May isang production manager daw sa isang company na naka-receive ng written request mula sa isang section head patungkol sa pag-purchase ng isang item na air conditioning unit. Halos kasabay lang din ng time na yun, naka-receive na naman siya ng isang request mula ulit sa isang section patungkol naman sa pag-purchase ng isang item ulit na forklift naman. Pero may problema. Ang problema, hindi niya pwedeng ma-purchase ang parehong item dahil base sa superior niya, isa lang dapat muna ang bilhin na item dahil limited lamang ang budget ng kanilang company.
What is decision making? Decision making may be defined as the process of identifying and choosing alternative courses of action in a manner appropriate to the demands of the situation. We all know that decision making is the heart of all the management functions. Decision making is a responsibility of the engineer manager. It is understandable for managers or engineer managers to make wrong decisions at some point. The wise manager will correct them as soon as they are identified. Management must strive to choose a decision option as correctly as possible. Since they have the power, the managers are responsible for whatever outcome their decisions may bring or the outcome. The higher the management level is, the bigger and more complicated decision making becomes. For example, the production manager of a certain company had received a request from Team A that they need an amount of 50,000. Then later on, Team B had request that they also need a budget. But the problem is, the production manager can only supply one team. Ngayon, yung production manager, mag-iisip na siya kung sino ba sa dalawang team yung dapat niyang i-approve. Sa decision na yon, dapat naisip niya yung magiging outcome dahil if he had made a wrong choice, he will be held responsible later on. Decision-making generally occurs in the planning phases of transportation projects. Several procedures for making decisions have been outlined in effort to minimize inefficiencies or redundancies. These are idealized processes and describe how decision-making might affect the ideal world. In simplest form, sa totoong buhay, madalas magkaroon ng problema sa paggawa ng desisyon. So, yung sinasabi na naka-outline yung mga decision, madalas sa ideal world lang yon.
Good day everyone, I'm Mark Anetam Gonzalez from BSc 3H and my topic is about the decision-making process. So without further ado, let us proceed. Rational decision-making is a process involving the following steps: diagnose problem, analyze environment, articulate problem or opportunity, develop viable alternatives, evaluate alternatives, make a choice, implement decision, and evaluate and adapt decision results. So first, diagnose a problem. If a manager wants to make an intelligent decision, his first move must be to identify the problem. So the first step in decision making is to understand the exact problem. So according to Charles Kettering, a problem defined is half solved. Defining a problem before trying to solve it is really important if you want to actually solve it and if you want to be efficient. I think that actually defining the problem is half work for two reasons. First, actually defining the problem requires us to understand the problem. and it makes us apply some discipline to the problem and gather some information and additional questions that may be related to the problem. Second, when you've got a problem statement or the thing well defined, you can keep your group on track when you're working on the solutions. So one example of keeping a track is like the major subjects in engineering. It requires us to provide the solution in a step-by-step process to keep us from making errors and also to obtain the correct answer accurately. So moving on, what is a problem? A problem exists when there is difference between an actual situation and a desired situation. So for example, the management of a construction company entered into a contract with another party for the construction of 25-story building on a certain site. So the actual situation is that it has not yet constructed, and the desired situation is the finished 25-story building. So the actual situation does not match the desired situation of the company. So therefore, the company has a problem, and that is the construction of the 25-story building. So next, analyze the environment. The environment where the organization is situated plays a very significant role in the success or failure of such an organization. So every organization, whether business or non-business, has its environment. The organizational environment is always dynamic and ever-changing. Changes today are so frequent, and every change brings so many challenges that managers and leaders of the organization need to be vigilant about the environmental change. The environment of an organization consists of its surrounding, anything that affects its operations favorably or unfavorably. The objective of environment analysis is the identification of constraints, which may be spelled out as either internal or external limitations. Example of internal limitations are as follows: limited funds available for the purchase of equipment, limited training on the part of employees, ill-designed facilities. And for the example of external limitations, patents are controlled by by other organizations. A very limited market for the company's products and services exists. Number 3, strict enforcement of local zoning regulations. By the word environment, we understand the surroundings or conditions in which a particular activity is carried on. So there are two components of the environment, which is the internal environment and external environment. The internal environment generally consists of those elements that exist within or inside the organization, such as physical resources, financial resources, human resources, and corporate culture, and the like. Then the internal environment includes everything within the boundaries of the organization. So on the other hand, the external environment embraces all general environmental factors and an organization-specific industry-related factors. So it refers to variables that are outside the organization and not typically within the short-run control of management. So to make it simple, factors outside the organization are the elements of the external environment. The organization has no control over how the external environment elements will shape up. So that's all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Jefferson Robles from BSCE 3H, and I'm going to discuss the decision-making process number 3 to 5. Number 3. Articulate the problem or opportunity. After the discussion of diagnose problem and analyze environment, the decision maker must now be ready to articulate the problem. Before a strategy can be explored, A clear articulation of the problem has to happen. It can be hard to put your finger on what the problem is. A lot of times, we have a more visceral experience of what is wrong rather than a concrete way to identify the issues at hand. Number 4. Develop viable alternatives. Oftentimes, problems may be solved by any of the solutions offered. The best among the alternative solution may be considered by the management. This is made possible by using a procedure with the following steps. First step, prepare list alternative solutions. Next step, determine the viability of each solution. And last step, revise the list but striking out those which are not viable. Number 5. Evaluate alternatives. By examining the benefits and drawbacks of each alternative, during the evaluation of alternatives, careful consideration is given to social, economic, and ecological factors that influence the predicted outcome. This is the process of analyzing and evaluating alternatives. Apply evaluation criteria to alternatives or options in a way that facilitates decision making. This may be one-step or multi-step process, depending on the complexity of alternatives and the decision. That's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, my name is John Pati Garcia from BSCE 3H and I am going to discuss the decision-making process numbers 6 to 8. Number 6. Make a choice. After the alternatives have been evaluated, the decision maker must now be ready to make a choice. This is the point where he must be convinced that all the previous steps were correctly undertaken. Choice making refers to the process of selecting among alternatives representing potential solution to a problem. Number 7. Implement decision. After a decision has been made, implementation follows. This is necessary or decision making will be an exercise in futility. Implementation refers to carrying out the decision so that the objectives sought will be achieved. To make implementation effective, a plan must be devised. Number 8. Evaluate and adopt decision results. In implementing decisions, the result expected may or may not happen. It is therefore important for the manager to use control and feedback mechanism to ensure results and to provide information for future decisions.
Good day everyone, my name is Doric Gibilea H. Martin from BSC A3H and I will be reporting about approaches in solving problems. Particularly, we will focus on qualitative evaluation. It refers to evaluation of alternatives using intuition and subjective judgment. It also focuses on why and how questions. It values judgments and emotional responses, and it relies on observations using the 5 senses such as hearing, taste, smell, touch, and vision. It gives a more in-depth evaluation of gathered information. Ang qualitative evaluation ay base sa quality ng given or acquired data at sa mga factors na nakakaapekto o nakaka-impluwensya sa nakuhang data sa isang sitwasyon. Unlike sa quantitative evaluation, ang qualitative evaluation ay mas focus sa emotional responses, judgments, and observations. Sa pagkuha ng qualitative data, may 3 method na kadalasang ginagamit. Number 1, interview. Number 2, observation. Number 3, documentation. Sa interview, informal interview yung kadalasang ginagamit dahil kalimitan walang limit sa informasyon na maaaring makuha ng interviewer. Sa observation, dito mas detailed yung informations na maaaring makuha. At sa documentation naman, the researcher or engineer manager obtains information directly to the source. Ang halimbawa nito, gustong malaman ng isang engineer manager kung bakit below average yung performance ng mga engineers under his supervision. Maaari niyang malaman yung mga dahilan ng mas mabilis at mas epektibo kung directly siyang pupunta at oobserbahan ng mga engineers under supervision. When to use qualitative evaluation? May 4 na senaryo kung saan kalimitan ginagamit yung qualitative evaluation. Number 1, when the problem is fairly simple. Number 2, the problem is familiar. Number 3, when the costs involved are not great. At number 4, when immediate decisions are needed. Kapag yung problemang isosolve ay hindi naman nagre-require ng accurate numerical data, at kapag dati na siyang nag-e-exist at kadalasang na-encounter din ng ibang company or factory, at kapag walang malaking halaga na nakataya sa isang decision, at nangangailangan to ng agarang pagdedesisyon, maaaring gamitin yung qualitative evaluation. Ang isang factory ay mayroong 3 shift. Sa first shift, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Sa second shift, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Sa third shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Sa isang shift, 200 workers yung kinakailangan. At noong September 16 at 1 p.m., na-inform yung factory manager na 5 workers from second shift ang biglaang hindi makakapagtrabaho. At dahil nga yung problema ay simple lang, pamilyar naman siya, at nangangailangan ng agarang pagdedesisyon na pagpasyahan ng factory manager kung sino sa mga first shift worker ang kailangan mag-overtime. Nagawa niya yon without using numerical data. Sa mga ganitong pagkakataon o mga problema, dito kadalasan ginagamit yung mga qualitative evaluation. Feedback as a control mechanism in the decision-making process. Step 1. Diagnose the problem. Kailangan malaman muna kung ano ba talaga yung problema at yung mga sanhi nito. Step 2. Analyze the environment. Step 3. Articulate problems and opportunities. Step 4. Develop variable alternatives o yung mga solution para sa isang problem. And step 5, evaluate alternatives. Titimbangin kung alin sa mga solution yung mas importante at mas epektibo. Step 6, make a choice. Kailangan ng pumili. At step 7, implement decision. Yung solution na napili, yun yung i-implement para ma-solve yung problem. And para naman sa step 8, evaluate results. May 2 kahihinatnan yung resulta natin. When the results are not achieved, determine steps where the error was made. Kapag hindi nakuha yung desired results, kailangan balikan yung process at isa-isahin yung step upang tingnan kung saan ba nagkaroon ng error at uulitin yon. At kapag naman na-achieve yung desired results, adapt the decision or implement the decision results. That would be all. Thank you.
Quantitative techniques. There are several techniques that a manager can employ while making decisions. For example, quantitative techniques or models enable managers to take decisions objectively and efficiently. This technique rely on a specific and statistical approach to make good decisions. The followings are such important quantitative techniques of decision-making. First is linear programming. This technique basically helps in maximizing an objective under limited resources. The objective can be either optimization of a utility or minimization of a disutility. In other words, it helps in utilizing a resource or constraint to its maximum potential. Managers generally use this technique only under condition involving certainty. Hence, it might not be very useful when circumstances are uncertain or unpredictable. Second is probability decision theory. This technique lies in the premise that we can only predict the probability of an outcome. In other words, we cannot always accurately predict the exact outcome of any course of action, Managers use this approach to first determine the probabilities of an outcome using available information. They can even rely on their subjective judgment for this purpose. Next, they use this data of probabilities to make their decisions. They often use decision trees or payoff matrices for this purpose. This technique relies on probabilities instead of exact and accurate outcome. Third is the game theory. Sometimes, managers use certain quantitative techniques only while taking decisions pertaining to their business rivals. The game theory approach is one such technique. This technique basically simulates rivalries or conflicts between business as a game. The aim of managers under this technique is to find ways of gaining at the expense of their rival. In order to do this, they can use 2-person, 3-person, or number persons games.
Queuing theory is one that describes how to determine the numbers of services units that will minimize both customers' waiting time and cost service. The queuing theory is applicable to companies where waiting lines are common situation. For example, sometimes a manufacturing company might gather the stock of unsold goods due to irregular demands. This theory basically aims to solve such problem. The aim of this theory is to minimize such waiting periods and also reduce investment or such expenses. In simulation is a model constructed to represent reality on which conclusions about real-life problems can be used. It is a highly sophisticated tool by means of which the decision make develop a mathematical model of the system under construction. As the name suggests, the simulation technique observes various outcomes under hypothetical or artificial setting. Managers try to understand how their decisions will work out under diverse circumstances. Accordingly, they finalize on the decision that is likely to be the most beneficial to them. Understanding outcomes under such simulated environments instead of natural setting reduced risk drastically. Network models. These are models where large complex tasks are broken into small segments that can be managed independently. Complex activities often required concentrated effort by personnel in order to avoid wastage of time, energy, and money. This technique aims to solve this by creating strong network structures for work. And also, the most prominent network models are the Program Evaluation Review Techniques or PERT is used to identify the time it takes to finish a particular task or activity. It is a system that helps in proper scheduling and coordination of all tasks throughout a project. The Critical Path Method or CPM is a project modeling techniques that used by project managers to find the important deadlines and deliver a project on time. In a project, the critical path is the longest distance between the start and the finish including all tasks and their duration.